There are actually silverfish under my chair just a few days ago, and to be honest, I was terrified. And in fact, I'm terrified right now even, because a silverfish or a cockroach may pop out of nowhere in front of my feet right now, and I will have no way of knowing it. But you know what? I'll persevere. I'll continue and keep on doing album reviews. Because today I'm doing an album review on the new Brockhampton album, Iridescence. So Brockhampton, the best boy band since One Direction, they're back. And before 2017, they weren't that famous. But after 2017, they were super famous. Simply because of their 3 amazing albums. The Saturation Trilogy. Saturations 1, 2, and 3. And these are the 3 albums that made them an amazing boy band. And in fact, all 3 of the Saturation albums ended up on my number 4 spot, I think, on my year-end list of the 2017 best albums. So they were making great numbers. And on these albums, they had fused pop rap, R&B, hardcore rap, industrial rap, and blended them so well into something so catchy, so mainstream, so accessible, yet smart and witty at the same time. And the hooks and the choruses on the tracks are very catchy and sticky and memorable. The chemistry between the members of Brockhampton are very strong, and they had put out with some awesome music videos. And then, early in the year 2018, they have made an incredibly difficult decision to kick out one of the most key members of Brockhampton, and that is Amir Vaughn. And the reason being is that Amir Vaughn's ex-girlfriend had accused him of abuses, including emotional abuse or even sexual abuse. And I think Brockhampton made the right decision to kick him out. It's a good choice, but at the same time, it means there's going to be a big change for the boy band. First of all, Iridescence, the recording is way more colorful and precise. The beats are actually way more exciting. They are more industrial and grimy. The bass, they are thicker. The drums, they are heavier. And the pitched vocals, the chipmunk vocals, they are not as, I guess, distracting and as out of place as those on Saturation 1, 2, and 3. But despite that, there are also a few flaws on this album that are way more, I guess, absent on the Saturation albums. And it feels like this album, Iridescence, had kind of lost its magic that the Saturation albums have. So maybe that's why I don't like Iridescence as much as the Saturation albums. But despite that, I think this album is probably the moodiest and the most emotional Brockhampton album yet. And also, it has some really grimy and fun and exciting bangers, but bangers-wise, they are no way as good as the bangers on Saturation. And I feel like one of the biggest flaw of Iridescence is that the members of Brockhampton isn't well balanced enough. Members like Joba, Merlin, and Dom dominates most of the album, while members like Bareface, Kevin Abstract, or Matt, they are more, I guess, more subtle, more hidden in the background, and I wish they would all appear on this album with equal time, with equal space, but I feel like there's a little imbalance situation going on the album. But nonetheless, there are also tracks on the album that I find very cohesive and collective and soulful. And the album opener, New Orleans, is not one of them.
They told me God gave me a mission, but I'm missing the supplies to complete it. I ain't the one you should read it. I'm used to being defeated. So nigga, brother, who you skating with?
It's a relatively weak start for a Brockhampton album. Think about Heat. Think about Sweet. Think about Boogie. Or was it Gummy, the first track of Saturation 2? I forgot. But anyway, New Orleans, it has this drony, migraine-inducing beat that keeps on looping again and again. And we also get these strange samples sort of popping up here and there, orbiting the track a little bit. But that being said, there are no strong hook or chorus on this track, or anything for that matter. And it's a really weak start for an album. And Matt and Joba, they didn't even do too much on this track, so it's sort of an underwhelming track. But the second track, Thug Life, sort of redeems itself a little bit. The track Thug Life is more like New Orleans Part 2 with a similar kick drum and with a similar hook. In fact, exactly the same hook, but with a different instrumental, which is more relaxing and smooth and moody. I really like Dom's verse on this track. It's very emotional and passionate, and overall, it's surprisingly relaxing and smooth and fine, and I guess soothing track. And then we have the track Berlin, which is equally as underwhelming as New Orleans. Again, it has a more drony industrial instrumental with these orbiting sound effects, including car engines starting. And once again, it's not as colorful or vibrant or as solid as Brockhampton's previous material. While Dom and Joba, they are good on this track, but still overall, the track doesn't feel any special or any colorful or anything. And then we have another small track titled Something About Him. It's very short, and it's very moody, dreamy, and pretty much all the vocals on this track are auto-tuned. And I don't have a huge problem with auto-tune, but when the entire track is pretty much auto-tuned, it's a little, I guess, bland. And overall, the song, there are no switches or beat changes or anything. So overall, the track feels deep, and it's not sweet enough. It's not hard-hitting enough. It's just not memorable enough. But then the album hits a peak with the track Where the Cash At, which is where Merlin basically dominates the entire track, except for that little Matt verse at the end. I think that's Matt, right? I don't want to get anything wrong, but yeah, even though I wish there were more members of Brockhampton appearing on this track is still amazing. It's a huge banger. It's off the walls. It's wild. I love the warpy machinery industrial beats. They work really well with the click-clacks, the camera click-clack sound effects. They are kind of creative. But what makes this track so great is Merlin's energy, Merlin's performance, and his strong attitude. The track Wait is more moody and definitely way more heavier and more heart-trenching as well. The track starts off with a verse from Kevin Abstract, which is great, stunning, and memorable. Kevin Abstract sort of talks about looking back at his youth, looking back at the old days of Brockhampton, and it's passionate, it's emotional, it's soulful. I really like the luscious strings, and then after a minute or so, the track sort of transitions into this very dense, warpy dance beat that kind of reminds me of Igloo Ghost's production for some reason. But then after that, it gets really emotional, and all the other members of the band sort of talks about stress, and of course, Wait, which is basically the title of the track, and the lyrics of the track is really hard-hitting and memorable, and I love it. And then again, we have District, which is another track with some drony industrial grimy beats, except they are rather bland because they don't complement the rap performance really well.
Let me from away out of this bitch. Find myself high in the distance. Find me up, high in the distance. With the rest of some diamonds and mixing.
And also, on this track, it feels like each member are sort of disconnected. They are just, rapping their own verses without complimenting each other all that much. So the whole track feels so, I guess, drab and dry. And I feel like the production is trying to be glitchy too hard. It's trying to be a banger, but then it falls flat because it's just so bland. It's just so average, but yet noisy at the same time with the bells and whistles. And after a simple interlude titled Loophole, we have Tape, which has some stuttery pianos, which are really simple. The overall instrumentals of the track are really simple. While I don't like the instrumentals of the track all that much, the verses by the band members on this track are really emotional and hard-hitting. They are face-revealing, they are vulnerable and very painful, and very, I guess, heart-trenching and in-your-face as well. But still, overall, the track doesn't sound all that special, and even though the lyrics, they are strong, they are solid, the instrumentals, they are what hindered the track from being great. But the album sort of moves on to Jouvert, or Jouvert, or Jouvert. I don't know how to pronounce this word. It's French, maybe, I think. But Jouvert, I'm gonna call it Jouvert. Damn, this track is definitely a highlight of the album.
White gloves, wood grain, money in the suitcase, on my way to the bank, on my way to the bank, on my way to the bank.
Once again, the beat is very industrial and grimy and way more, I guess, in the moment, way more badass, and it's a total banger. And Joba's verse on this thing is incredibly intense and psychotic, where he screams his brains off, talking about, distrust and all that. And Merlin's performance on this track is amazing. Merlin is always a great beam of light on this album. And the way he's introduced into this track with the, very small instrumental change, and him yelling, "Excuse me!" It's really charismatic. And I like how it just becomes this little carnival, horns, festival instrumental thing, and Merlin is like this funny member of a psychotic killer gang. Merlin's character is really well portrayed on this track. And then to top it off, we have the track Honey, which is equally as fun. It has a very driving beat, and the synths are incredibly funky, and the hook is incredibly catchy, and the sampling is great as well. The ha 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 laughing sounds, and one time for ya, 1 million reasons to get rich,
A million reasons to get rich, my nigga. My people still try snitching whenever they touch the mic. That's what happens when a therapist isn't somewhere aside. Take flight, never lean to the left or the right, cause they turn the other cheek when a nigga start to die.
The singing is great as well. I could have been homeless. Even though it's auto-tuned and it's pitched, it's like chipmunk vocals, but I don't mind it at all. The chipmunk vocals, they are not distracting, and they complement the instrumentals really well. And the second half of the track just breaks into this very heavenly, sweet, and entrancing instrumentals, and oh boy, this track is very sweet and very catchy. And then we have the track Vivid, which is an okay banger. It's decent at best. It has a very straightforward piano start, but then it breaks into another industrial, grimy beat instrumental. Admittedly, the beat is very good, but the flow of the track, it's very monotone, and it's kind of average, so I don't like this track all that much. Well, I do like it, but not as much as other tracks. And then the next track is San Marcos, which is basically this acoustic guitar, auto-tune ballad. It's very emotional, very soulful, and very tear-inducing as well, because it's probably the most cohesive and collective and soulful and passionate the boy band had ever been. And I also really love the ending of the track where the strings become very dense, and there is sort of this choir, this children choir thing, which is very, very grand. I want more. I want more. And then we have yet another very moody and emotional track, Tonya, which is premiered in the Jimmy Fallon show, Tonight Show. And I really like the singing. It's very soulful and passionate, and each member on this track contributes to the moodiness of the track really well.
I hated songs about fame, cause that stuff meant nothing. Until the headlines came, the first flight I'm stuck in. Maybe it means nothing, but I have to say I think about you often.
I feel like Merlin's verse is very passionate and very heavy and hard-hitting. And instrumental-wise, it's still great. It's better than my expectation. The strings are very nocturnal, and they complement with the rap verses really well. And overall, the song is smooth, it's soothing, but yet heavy and deep. And the album ends off with Fabric, which is a very solid closer, yet a very eerie and spooky cliffhanger.
You don't understand, I can't get up and shout.
Stay rough, get buff, get out. Hey boy, stay rough, get buff, get out. The monster.
And it's, once again, it's sort of this singing pop rap thing, but it's not that poppy, it's not that vibrant and uplifting, but they are rather strange and chilling. I really love the lyrics of this track. It mainly deals with a lack of privacy, loss of a friend, suicidal thoughts even. And I really, really like the risky and spooky TikTok guitars. They are very eerie, and they give this vibe as if we are trapped in this house with no doors or windows whatsoever, and these walls are very dark colored, and we're sort of trapped in this weird mansion forever, and we have no escape. It's sort of claustrophobic even. And the singing chops on this track is pretty outstanding. Don't mind me. It's sort of theatrical even, and I love it. Overall, I think the album is good. It's good. Even though there are songs on the album which sound sort of generic, pretty average, maybe bland even, and there is sort of an imbalance situation going on between the members of Brockhampton. And even though tracks like 1999 Diana and 1998 Truman didn't end up... 1998 Truman and 1999 Diana, yep, they didn't end up on this album. They are straight bangers, especially Diana track. That Diana track, amazing. But they didn't make it to this album. But still, there are a lot of grimy bangers on the album that takes a more industrial and machinery approach. But yet, there are still moody and emotional ballads that are very potent and powerful and memorable and soulful and passionate and deep and heavy and hard-hitting and heart-trenching and tear-inducing. And overall, I think this album is very conceptually focused, and it's not that bad. Once again, it's good, even though I feel like it kinda lost the magic that Saturation has. I still enjoy a bulk of the album. The worst track here is District, and my favorite track is Honey. I'm giving Brockhampton's Iridescence a 7 out of 10. So Have you listened to the new Brockhampton album? From 1 to 10, how much is rated? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more.